let me thank American Bazaar to give me this opportunity to come and talk here. It really feels good for me to come to Bangalore because my scientific career actually took off from Bangalore when I was a PhD student in IIT, speaking at the superconductivity conference many, many years back when it was one of the hottest topics. So I have fond memories of Bangalore and Mysore, so it feels good to come and talk here. Thanks to all of you for coming on a Saturday. I know it's one of the biggest challenges to travel in Bangalore, and if you have braved here, then there must be some reason for it. So I hope that what I tell you will be helpful to you, and feel free to ask questions afterwards. So just a few minutes back, Sheila Murthy said that we don't really talk about ourselves. So I asked the MC not to give my introduction. The reason is I'll give my own introduction so that you know how to give the introduction or how to talk about yourself. Because when I was a PhD student, nobody taught me that. And I suffered through many years how to build a career. But thankfully, my stars were aligned well. I have done very well myself. In less than 10 years, I reached the C-suite because I planned for it. And that required a lot of changes. And so hopefully, what I tell you is not just about the talent, technology, but it also is a message for how to build your own careers, right? All right. So who am I? I'm actually a scientist. I have a PhD in quantum physics. I worked in applying quantum mechanics to biophysical problem, which is the solar energy. As you know, even today, solar cells efficiency is only 5 to 10%. In the lab, you can get 20%, but that's not everlasting, right? So that's a hard problem, and I did that some 20 to 25 years back, applying quantum mechanics. So that's one of the new terms that you use here called big data, right? So we'll talk about it a little later. So I'll tell you that was a big data problem even then, right? Because if anybody is from math background, if you know what matrix algebra is, you cannot invert a matrix which is a 5,000 by 5,000 dimension. Even today, if you have supercomputers, it is a lot more work. So the big data problems existed for quantum chemists and physicists and astrophysicists for a very, very long time, right? But what is the impact happening? We'll talk about that. I did work in many, many fields: nanotechnology, nonlinear optics. Some of these terms may look like jargons, but they're important because if you are using sunglasses and they change color, they're called photochromic glasses, right? So I worked in that field called photochromic, and they're also called nonlinear optics, right? I worked in drug design, protein-protein interactions. So about 15 fields I worked and published, and then one day decided that I need to switch my careers, and ended up at AOL, the America Online, right? The #1 internet company of its time, and even today, from an innovation perspective, it is still one of the greatest companies, because if that didn't exist, the new companies would not have existed. If there is anybody from Google and they don't know the history of Google, Google was almost shut down unless AOL revived it. And then the other way around happened because Google succeeded and they bought AOL, they invested in AOL later on. So Google, the existence of Google is based on AOL's investment. So many people would not know that, right? Facebook, what Facebook does is what AOL did in late 99s, right? They had all these products that you see today. Your homepage, that was actually called homepage. Your face pages or your company pages, they had community centers, groups that existed. But it was, remember, that was Web 1.0. Things were not dynamic. What Facebook has done, because the technology evolved, so you get now dynamic content in real time. That's why now that's called user-generated content, but AOL had user-generated content in the 90s, right? Then, of course, later on, I'm a business leader, I coach, I have mentees from public company CTOs and many CEOs as my mentees. And so this is my advisory. I founded recently a Reignite strategy where I actually advise CEOs through that. I will be joining another company, which is one of the largest, one of the top 3 energy companies in the world, their chief data scientist. right? So earlier we were talking about shale gas, right? Fracking. So one of the roles that I have to play is how data can be utilized to optimize whether shale or fracking or oil or solar, right? So my domain, it's not domain specific, my expertise is beyond domain. I'm also the senior fellow at the International Cybersecurity Center at George Mason University, where I was part of a think tank, right? I teach at Georgetown University, and I don't teach any science, I teach business, analytics, all right? And I've taught at George Mason for 7 years in the School of Management as well. As earlier, Sheila mentioned, I'm also the president of TIE, which is one of the largest entrepreneurial network in the world, right? 200 chapters in 50 countries, right? And one of the goals for us is to grow this network in DC area. So, and Sheila Murthy is one of the board members with us. Then in the past, what I've done, if you've not heard, Axiom Corporation is one of the largest data as a service provider. They enable marketing for Fortune 100 companies. And the reason they do it, because they have data on people. So they know about, in US, they know about everyone, something like 1,500 attributes. So whether you drive a car, you live in a house, you live in an apartment, but that data they collect over the years, 45 years in making, and then all the major corporations, name it, Macy's, Target, Citibank, all of them use their services to market. So I was a VP of data science there, providing consulting basically. Before that, I was at Network Solutions, which is now called web.com. It's a domain name company. It's one of the original domain name company in the world. Of course, after deregulation, it became smaller, and now GoDaddy is the one which advertises in India, right, for buying domains, right? But on Network Solution exists now as web.com. So I turned around that company. I did branding, marketing, whatever you want to call it about the business side. So no science, but science knowledge was very helpful. You have to think about, like, when solving problems, how you use it. I've co-founded a company called Foodem. It's in the Baltimore incubator. It helps solve problems for restaurants and suppliers. I formed another one earlier. Andy was talking about last mile problem for through SAP Ganges, right? So this is a last mile problem which benefits the shopkeeper, not the large corporation. So there's a difference, right? They are doing this last mile problem to benefit themselves, and by increasing the work of the shopkeeper, my startup actually gives benefit to the shops. So we have to think what problem you want to solve. So I've consulted with many other companies. Some of them are Bell Systems 24 is the largest call center in Japan. So I put their cloud and data strategy. I was head of AOL Research Lab. That's the building right next to us. In 2005, 2006. I used to come here every quarter. I recruited people from IITs, IISc, Stanford, Penn State, brought them here. 12 PhD scientists working for me, and total a team of 40 people. While I was based in US, and I was actually doing my executive MBA at the same time. So I had to plan my trips between my classes. So it requires a lot of things to build a career. I've been at the AOL for almost 10 years. And I've worked in many universities, Rutgers, Pittsburgh, Sydney, IIT Bombay, as a scientist. And recently I was mentioned by Financial Times as one of the leaders for the corporate boards. Right? So what I want to tell you is that all of you who want to succeed in career, you have to think where you can apply what you have learned. Doesn't have to sit in your box. People ask me all the time, oh, you are a chemist or you're a physicist, what are you doing in internet company? When I joined AOL, I'll tell you a very simple thing. It's still the same problem. You're trying to move an electron from one point to another. In a protein, your backbone is there, amino acids are there, or a DNA is there, right? In the IT world, you are still going from a server to a client. Your backbone is changed by fiber optic, the carriers, and your routers and switches. We still can't solve that problem efficiently. So applying the same concept very easily to this domain was very easy for me. So think about it. Think how you can apply. That's the key part. Anyway, what I'm here to talk about is more about what my perspective on technology trends and talent is. So I'll talk from these 4 different vantage points that I have, right? Being a scientist and a technologist. Right? I'm a veteran of big data, as I said. I've done it many times. I've built data science team, what people talk about. It's a wave. If you want to ride it, you will succeed. If you think it's a buzzword, then I think you started at the wrong foot already. But again, if it's a wave, it's not for everyone to surf. So you have to know what your business is before you end up riding that wave. Very, very important. Right, from the cybersecurity point of view, because what we are going to talk about social mobile, so cybersecurity is an important part. Next. So the world is changing, right? There are these 4 terms, which 5 terms you will remember, but it's actually 6 I's, if you think of I's, right? Globalization is happening, so globalize, right? Socialize, we all know about socialization, right? We talk about Facebook, Twitter, whatnot, but it's more beyond that. Those are just the conduit for it. Then mobilize, right? I think all of you have more mobile power than some of us in US, because in India they say roughly about 1.5 mobile phones per user, even with such a large population. Right? We don't have that. We don't have double SIM phones yet. We can't do mobile payments yet, right? So in some sense, India has progressed very well in that, right? But it has its own challenges. In fact, some of the challenges are well addressed here, but they're not addressed in US. So I'll come to one of those examples. Virtualize, right? One of the things that we want data everywhere. We want to be everywhere. The cloud virtualization we are talking about, right? It has implications for all IT workforce besides industry. Variabilize is a big term which is not an English word. It's a made-up word by me and one of my friends who was a CIO at Bell Systems, and we came up with this word. It's nothing but it's called personalization, right? So a company has to support its customer by providing variable service, right? Because all of us want something for us as a consumer. We don't want a mass mailing. And you know, most of the marketing campaigns don't have great ROI because those are mass mailed. So it's very important from that point of view. But all this, so if you think in short term, if you want to remember the message, then it's like SOMOGLO requires Viva, right? Social, mobile, global requires virtualization and variabilization. What it does, can you do the next one, right? So that if you want to have that strategy, it doesn't matter what business you are in, you have to make sure that you are providing variabilized service and you are available everywhere, right? Next slide, right? What it impacts, so social, mobile, global, it impacts the wheel of life: water, health, energy, environment, and literacy. Everywhere, all these technologies, you can actually make a difference in all these areas. Now, if somebody want to ask energy, we talked about shale gas, right? Fracking is a problem. And after fracking, there will be some other things that are called earthquakes, right? And with fracking comes problem with water, right? So they're all interrelated problems. We cannot take them in isolation, right? And if earthquakes are there, the environment is polluted, then we have health issues, right? And the literacy is a big important part because people want to make fast money by allowing shale gas to be removed from their area, but what's the impact to the whole society? So these things have to be worried about. It's not that it's a bad thing, but you should know how to use it. That's the concept. So next one. So what happens, all this, where does it lead to? It leads to large amounts of data, right? It's always increasing. So if think of ONGC for here, and if they want to collect data, how much data can they collect? Because from every rig, at every point, they can put sensors nowadays, which can transmit data at the speed that you cannot even imagine. But how is that data used is the problem, right? Now, if that data is collected from sensor, it is also open to threats. Because if threats are there, then your availability is actually compromised, right? In order for all this to solve, this is where the last I's come in, that is the KPIs, right? KPI stands for key performance indicators. Your car has a dashboard that shows you the KPIs for the car, right? Speed, how much gas, right? At what RPM your engine is moving. That's your simplest KPI dashboard. So you need to translate that to much bigger things, right? If you go to a control center for a oil rig of ONGC, I know a little bit about it because I grew up in ONGC environment. So if you go to their data center where they collect the data and show it, they collect a lot more data and show a lot more KPIs. But as technology evolves, a lot more data is coming on, they have to keep modifying the dashboards because the value has to come out from the data, right? So you need KPIs always, and so it's an evolving thing, it's not one-time thing. So next one. So social, what is social network analysis, right? 2 years back, I think Facebook wrote an article or some magazine wrote an article from Mark Zuckerberg that, oh, we can do graph analysis of the social network, right? But if you know that social network analysis is not a new term. It was used some 75 plus years back, especially by health people, epidemiologists. And they used to create maps by hand because there were no tools to see where a particular disease is happening. And that was social network analysis, and they actually used to write how many people have migrated from this town to that town and that town, and they saw how the disease has propagated, right? So it could be done even in paper and pencil. What Facebook or Twitter or any other social media is doing is just huge amounts of data, right? But how a business can leverage that is remain to be seen, right? That is very, very challenging. That means now Facebook is, for example, allowing you to put ads. What is the impact of your marketing money on through those ads? That is what you want to spend. If you're a business person, that's what you're looking for. If you're a technology person, you want to say, how can I optimize those ad presentation? If you're an SEO person, you want to change the wordings of the ad. So all this is an ecosystem, right? So one requires what is called interdisciplinary thinking. It's not just that I am a technologist or I am a business person, I'm a product person. If you want to take advantage of it, you have to think beyond your domain. Next. Let's talk about mobile. It's a new phenomenon, right? Certainly in the last few years, it has grown very big. People haven't figured out all the challenges. Asia versus US versus Europe, big differences, right? As I said, India, you can do the payment, right? And the moment you take out money from your ATM machine, you get a text message or your phone, right? In India, that's happening, but not in US yet. So we are behind in some sectors. So there is a need for that. There is a need for talent in that area. What's happening with the speed, right? Even when I'm sitting in US, I use my Citibank card in India to buy tickets on Make My Trip. The speed at which they can send the text, the session doesn't log out. So something must have been done good here, right? In fact, Make My Trip does two carrier authentication. One is the ICICI Bank, and then since my card is Citibank, it does a Citibank authentication. But that all happens in fraction of seconds, right? We are still at the place where we actually have to take a picture of the check and deposit, and that's also not available at all banks. That we are still growing. So if you think from a talent need, there is a talent need, right? Not just programmers, but beyond programmers. Now, with all this fast data movement between various transactions, there is a whole problem of tracking this, making sure it is actually right? Yeah, they have to verify it. So a lot of processes are built into this so that this data has the right value, right? If ICICI Bank drops the connection, I'm done, right? So think of it. So the tracking of the data itself to create value is a very important area. Then the third one in this mobile is this app revolution, right? You know, some zillions of apps are there on every platform now. And if you look at your own phones, or how many of you use actually? When the first one comes out, you download it and then you forget. So you're filling up your disk space, somebody is collecting the data from you. Because even though you're not using, the apps are sending data. Angry Birds, right, recently has been in news that spying agencies were collecting data from Angry Birds. So every time you play that game, somebody else is getting the data, right? But you think it's a very naive game and you can just play. So how many apps are there that you know that are collecting, sending data on your behalf? And that's a lot of data, right? Your GPS location, your transactions that you are doing. So challenge. App revolution has a lot of challenge. So what I call that is data overload, right? But from the data, there's a lack of knowledge. Since I'm speaking in India, I'll give you one simple concept, right? It's an inverse problem. We have lots of data, but very little knowledge, right? Whereas if you look at Bhagavad Gita, it's very compact, 18 chapters, few hundred shlokas, and there are a lot of volumes generated out of it. How many translations and explanations of Gita exist? So it's an inverse problem. So we can't actually make sense of knowledge. We can't gain knowledge from so much data because we just don't have that thinking yet. Right? Global, right? What's demographic challenge? India is actually a great country for the talent pool, the future consumers, right? Whereas many countries in the world like Japan, right? Japan will have 65% of the population over the age of 65 by 2050, and that's next year. Think of it. I was very happy to see that there was a news article, I think the Japan Prime Minister came to India last week or something. I hope that they will make some deal that the immigration opens up better for Japan, because they can actually use young people a lot. And it's one of the great countries to live, besides the earthquakes, right? I've been in Japan on the day of that big earthquake, March 11 in 2011. I was in Tokyo at that day, so I have more stories to share later on, right? But the challenge is, are the talent ready, right? We were discussing about it earlier, right, in the panel discussion. Is the talent ready, right? Somebody was mentioning that MBA students don't know how to write, which is a sad story. And that is actually very true for a lot of people from India, that we don't know how to write. Right? An MBA student, an MBA finance, a gold medalist from a college in Pune cannot actually write a balance sheet. What do you say to that? How does a person get a gold medal? And that too in finance. So it's not a challenge for US, it's a challenge for India itself. Because this is a company in India, in Pune, and they hire these people, and 2 months later they realize that they cannot perform. So somewhere the system is broken. And we know that engineering students, that the statistics that was released last year, I think it was by the government or NASCOM, I can't remember which one, that they said that only 20% of the engineers are employable. So it's not a challenge from the student's point of view. Actually, it's more challenge from the policy point of view. What are we doing, right? You can take your best VLSI course. That's good. You get a grade in it. But how do you apply it? That is not taught, right? We are not trained actually. Like I did my PhD from IIT. I can tell you, I was not trained to do anything else but to do science, right? So not everybody can actually change that. So the thing is, it has to be discussed much more at a policy level and at the government level. But those who want to aspire to build a career, they have to start themselves, right? They have to find a mentor and go with it. You have to find a mentor, and mentors don't come. So the philosophy, the Vedic philosophy says the guru will appear, right, when the right day and time is there. But in career, the gurus don't appear. You have to find a guru, right? So remember that, and then look for a spiritual guru later on, but for now, career guru, find somebody who you can trust and can tell you. With the global productivity metrics, we have challenges here, and quality is a challenge. So I tell this from a perspective. I've been working with Indian companies for last 10 years after I've established AOL, and I've worked with many companies here for various reasons. And I can tell you quality is a big issue. Right? Unless you have the right person to deliver, you can have challenges. So it has to come out from inside. And that's more likely because of leadership challenges, I think, in the country. Then, of course, social political impact we were talking earlier, and I'm not expert in it, and I don't follow too much about it. So, next one. So when I say it leads to data, right? So now I'm going to go a little bit more technical here, right? So data. So you have heard these terms, right? Big data, things like that. What data is? It can be structured data, it can be semi-structured, right? Your email is semi-structured, for example. Then a lot of unstructured data comes in. So if you are talking about DDoS attacks, and if many of you don't know what DDoS is, it's called denial of service attacks. So some bad guy wants to bring your website down. They send you a lot of packets, so a real user cannot get to the website, right? And that data, if collected rightly at the packet level, is all unstructured data, because different requests are coming at the same time, so all the data is meshed up between each other lines, so you cannot actually filter it easily. So that's why it's called unstructured data. Things that you write on Facebook, Twitter, everything is semi-structured or unstructured. So this is a challenge. Huge amounts, as I said, is generated. I'll repeat those words so many times. But the speed at which it's generating, right? How many of you actually look at all the updates from your friend on the Facebook? Whatever comes on your first screen, you do it, and then 10 minutes later, you will do it again, right? But the updates are much more, right? So what happened? So they were your friends on the social network, but you didn't even get to see their updates, because you can only see so much. Right? So that's a challenge. So as I said, this is creating the wave of big data, and it's not for everyone. Next. So along with this, now comes the challenges. Recently, I don't know if many of you follow, but the concept or the news about data breaches is growing. Just in this year, last 6 months, I should say, some major corporations were hit by data breaches, right? One is Target, and I know Bangalore has a big presence of Target here. Their IT staff, IT department is here in Bangalore as well. Now, who's responsible for it? Is IT responsible? Is the corporate responsible? Is the consumer responsible? Or the bad guy responsible? But everybody has a role to play. Data breaches don't happen just because a bad guy thought that it will happen. It has a lot more to do. This is a Neiman Marcus is another chain for a well-known brand. Michaels is another brand. But if you look at the history of data breaches, I think the first known case that came out was AOL. That was not a data breach, by the way. The data was given to academic institution for research, and the academic institution, since they are open, they put the data out. And some very smart reporter from New York Times decided to analyze the data. And he did what is called text mining, and he was able to figure out one particular person with a social security number and address. And that's when the US government woke up saying data breaches are going to happen. So it was not an accidental data breach or a malicious data breach. It was just not thought out. But what it created is a whole industry around how to address this problem. But ever since, data breaches have not stopped, and they are actually growing in size. So it's a very big problem, and it is something that requires a technology solution in multiple areas. The next one is attacks. I talked about a little bit on website. Defacing of website is one example, right? But I don't know about India much as far as the home networks are concerned, but in US, we all have high-speed network within the house, right? 100 megabits and whatnot. All our routers, if we look at it very carefully, we are under attack every day. The number of packets that are being sent to our home routers is much more than some small business in the United States. Because what are they looking for is if they can break into the computers of me or Sheila or somebody else, they can get a lot of personal information. And these are called persistent threats. So if it has not happened in India, I am sure one day this will happen when the networks become better. With DSL lines, it's hard because you cannot sit there forever, right? But when you have fiber optic connections, it's very easy. So that is a growing area for technology talent, right? There's a lot of discussions about unauthorized and government tracking, and you can read that in newspaper, but it's there and it's going to be always there. So if you are a private company, you have to think about how you're going to address it. So, but what's happening is that now, right, we have gone beyond mobile, we have gone beyond cell phones, we have gone beyond computers. Now, you know, like you have your fridge, your toilet, your washing machine all connected to the network. Your cars have internet. There was if you find on YouTube, there is a guy who actually hacked into a car through the air pressure valve system. He could actually get onto that packets, and he actually got into the car, and he can stop the car, and the driver is still driving. Right? I think it was a Symantec who did that experiment. So the thing is, now not only like your devices that you carry, your home is a great site for attacking. Right? So if washing machine is sending data to whatever brand LG, offices, somebody in between can see what it is, where is the location of this machine. So these are what I call Internet of Things. So that requires a new way of thinking as well. So need for cybersecurity first, essential. There is no like 2 points about it. It's needed. I'll tell you some numbers in a few minutes, but for especially growing economy in India, it's certainly needed. And there are some schools now here. In fact, one of the first book on intrusions was written by a 14-year-old boy in Delhi. That was about 12, 15 years back. So the hackers are very smart, they're very young. So there is a great talent here which can be actually trained to become cybersecurity professionals. Because that requires a lot of logical thinking. So now what happens is, next one more. So just look at we were talking about outsourcing. So these are some statistics, right? That at present, 17% of US population does freelancing. But that number is likely to grow to 40%, right? So I fit in that bracket because I do freelancing. I work for a company for a short time, or I go as a contractor, work for a short time, move on. Because if you want to build your career or you want to work on certain things that you like, that's the only model that will work. Right? And that's the only way to grow your career sometimes. Because big corporations, you can only go to a certain point. So this is likely to change. This number is going to be, I think, higher than 40%. Right? And as we know, in the US especially, baby boomers are actually retiring. Just 2020, 18% will retire, so that has to be filled by the new workforce. And the new workforce is called millennials. Right? But there is a challenge with this workforce. Because, as you know, and some of you are probably fit in that bracket even here in India, you get your job and you're looking for your next job. So you're not actually focusing on what you are doing currently, right? And if you're not focused on what you're doing currently, then you cannot grow. You may grow in dollars or salary-wise, but mentally, maturity-wise, and experience-wise, you cannot grow. So one has to gain experience for some time, whether as a freelancer or whether as an employee. So this is a challenge with millennials, because they want everything fast. They want to all become rich or become a manager just with 1 year of experience. I can tell you at AOL when I was there, fresh person, 1 year, want to become a manager. What do you know about managing? You can't manage your own time. You want to manage people? Just because somebody else became manager doesn't make you eligible for it, right? So the thing is, this is a big challenge for new generation. It's not just sending a tweet or writing a Facebook post anymore. right? Company needs something, an output from people, right? So one of the other things that's happening is people want to get jobs with brand name companies. There's no need for it. It's a good thing if you can get it, but brand name doesn't make you a brand. That was a long time back. It happened when IBM was a brand. That working for IBM can lead you to some very nice jobs later on after experience. Remember, they were all experience. Even GE has a program to mentor, and some of those GE's top leadership goes and becomes CEOs in other companies, but they don't become CEOs by just 1 year of experience. They have been coached over the period of time. The current CEO was coached by the past CEO. So it doesn't happen easily. There's a lot more that goes on. So brand names are important, but you have to make your own brand, right? Next. So let's look at some numbers. So mobile talent, right? Right now there are various surveys and some calculations, some agencies. They will come up how many mobile developers are there, app developers. That number is 1 million to 2 million, they say, in the world. Now, how do you say who is a mobile developer? There is no perfect definition of it. But let's assume there are 1 million developers. This is likely to grow, right? As more and more desktops are going away, right? Only the tablets will survive, or the mobile devices will survive. And if Apple releases new phone next year with a bigger screen, so the desktops will pretty much die soon faster, right? So that means you need more and more mobile developers, because these mobile devices will come in all different shape and size, different resolution, right? So that somebody needs to code for all of them, right? And all these Internet of Things, fridge, refrigerator, toilet, and everything, all these require a different kind of screens, right? Depending on the company. So there will be a lot of development in that area. But what kind of talent is needed, right? If you're a company, you want someone who can develop some frameworks, because you cannot develop apps over and over again from scratch. And there are not many framework developers at present in the world. There are some open source frameworks, but they are still in their infancy. So I think next 5 to 10 years, you should see some of them. App architects. One is to code for the app. The second is to actually build the app which actually functions. Those architects are not too many of them. Very few companies can afford it, and very few people have experience in it, because it's still a new area. App developers, as I said, we will know. The other challenge, when the recession hit US, we let go like huge number of quality control people, both in US and outsourced, because that was the first thing they can cut. But quality is an important part. So there is actually, within US, there is a revolution going on right now. People are talking about how to re-engage quality people. Well, most of the quality people actually went into different line of job, because they were not programmers, they were not developers, so they actually left the industry. So to bring them back is a challenge. So there is a need for quality people now, right? But these apps, as I said, send a lot of data, so you need analysts to analyze this data. Most companies don't do it, but there is value in it. Next. From the data, this is the numbers. 200,000 plus data scientists are needed just alone in US. Now, what's a data scientist? Some of you are data scientists, but you probably don't know that, right? So think about it. A lot of people are business intelligence, they call them business intelligence folks or data warehouse folks. They could become easily data scientists, right? Remember, science means you know this problem to solve and you find a solution. That's all the science says. Here, only thing is what you are saying, you need to find what my business problem is, what my business data is, how do I add value to the business. So anyone can become a data scientist if they think the problem slightly differently, right? But there are certain roles that are important. One is data governance, right? I talked about data breaches, so it plays a big role. The security people, because if you have so much data, anybody can hack into you and get your company secrets. Big data architects, right? Because it's a challenge, right? One of the things that I hear in last 2 years that a chief marketing officer will ask me, oh, should I replace my data warehouse with Hadoop? Because he happened to read the Fortune magazine that big data means Hadoop, right? So the knowledge doesn't exist, but in order to build a great big data platform, you need architects who understand the technology side, they understand the data side, and they understand the business side. So you don't go and replace your data warehouse just because somebody says so. Then the people who actually can think of a solution that can be applied on data, those people are data scientists. Now you can analyze the data, then somebody has to know how to present it, right? As people say, right, a picture is worth millions of words. Same thing in business, pictures are important, right? You cannot, if you are talking about a DDoS attack, there is no way you can actually read those packets. You have to visualize it and try to find out who the bad guy is, right? Then based on that visual, what actions I take? Those are called people, I call them insighters. They can actually tell you what direction the business needs to take, what product needs to be improved, what new product can we develop from here. And that falls into innovation as well. Now with that, in order to run all this, you need administrators like the Hadoop administrator or whatever you want to call big data appliance administrators, and those are high demand right now, right? Silicon Valley is looking on an average about 15 Hadoop administrators on a given day. We don't have them, right? The other one is actual leaders, corporate leaders who understand this big data space. We don't have them. A traditional CIO is not a big data expert. Traditional CIO, even though their title says Chief Information Officer, they have never actually played with information much. They have been more about internal IT support all their life. They have been more about ICT, what they call internal communications and technology, right? But they have not actually ever looked at information from the data perspective. I think in US, there was a panel a few months back from a CIO magazine, and we were talking about it, and the number was roughly about 15% of the current CIOs actually understand how to leverage big data. These are big corporations we are talking about. Because that was not a role. That was marketing people did their own analytics and be happy. The sales people did their own analytics, they were happy. Right? The finance people, of course, do their own business, but they were never talking about it. The role of a data scientist is to bring all these domains into one. That requires a cultural change in a corporation. That means you break down silos, right? If you think of a big corporation, they have a CEO, they have a CIO, they have a CFO. And whatever the CFO signs, that's believed to be the right number. Exactly like that, there has to be what is called a chief data officer. He is responsible for all analytics of the business. So that means all silos need to break down if they want to add value to the business. Otherwise, you can have multiple silos because, as you know, when there are silos, the same data can look different, right? It never adds to the same thing. So these are some of the jobs that are opening up, or they are open, so you can actually take advantage of them. Now the next one, cybersecurity. As I told, right, lots of data, lots of things. These are some of the roles on a given day. Like the cybersecurity forum from University of Maryland talks about roughly about 150,000 jobs based on the current technologies, right? Think about when all these new devices will go, the sensors will be deployed in various industry, whether it's water, whether it's health, whether it's environment, a lot more data is going to go there. Smart grid is a classic example. It's sitting on a disastrous plane right now, right? Micro smart grids are going to come up. People don't know how to connect them, and how the connection with other smart grids is going to take place. Who is responsible? Who authenticates the token? We don't know yet. So that's where cybersecurity people are very, very important, right? So if you look at these roles, and these roles probably won't change even with the technology, but these are some of the roles. So those who are interested, they should get some training in these areas, right? And it's not a difficult thing. If you are a technology person, these are not difficult. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of logical thinking and a lot of practice. But these are well-paying jobs. They will be well-paying jobs for going forward. So you should probably look at it. So if you try to combine these things, these are all like, they work all, I put them slides differently for different areas, but they all work in together, right? Architects, enterprise architects, they have to work with social, mobile, cyber, everywhere. So, and then who gets the virtual right, who gets the cloud technology right, who gets the Hadoops of the world right. These things have to be combined. So there has to be senior level people, what are called enterprise architects, so that they can bring this technology together, right? Software engineers have to go beyond their domain of just coding. They need to understand business as well, right? I can tell you that most of the software engineers I work with, if I tell them what to do, they will do it. But if I tell them a business problem, 3 days later they say, we didn't know what to add, right? So if you want to grow, then you have to start thinking of the problem solving rather than coding. Because coding, and nowadays anyone can do coding, right? 10th graders code. Some of the geniuses from India, like the 10th graders, 9th graders who can code. So coding is not the only thing that engineers have to do. So just to give you some scope of like what salaries that we are looking in US in this space, right? So these are roughly, if you are a freelancer, what can you make? If you are a ELT or ETL person, right? Visualization people, data scientists, and these are, again, remember, these titles are generic and there is no experience part of it laid out in them, so the ranges are there. But look at this. All these jobs are open now. If you look in Silicon Valley, there are companies left and right, startups looking for data scientists. My son is an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, an incubator, and he worked for a company for 6 months, a small startup trying to build a device. So they're talking about Internet of Things, the device which you can wear on your stomach or on your shoulder, which actually tells you whether you are sitting properly or not. One of the challenges for software engineers is we have very bad postures, which actually results in health problems, which we don't care when we are young. Right? You have to sit straight, right? But the thing is, how do you find out a person who's sitting from this little device, whether the person's shoulder is slouching or his back is turning? That's where the data scientists play a role. So they have to build training sets. So they put on you and me and ask you to do certain things, then say, what kind of signal came? And that signal is transmitted into digital content. And that digital content is then analyzed, and then they predict what your position was. So even a startup like that, which is just building a very small device, requires more than one data scientist. Right? And now think of it, this industry is changing. There are more wearable, what they call wearable devices now. Your running shoes Nike had initially the shoes, and they got in trouble because you could track a runner in a jungle and you can follow them, right? So there is a protection part. And all these wearable devices that are coming up all require different skills. But at the end of it, they all work based on the output that the data scientist gives them. Because if the data scientist says the signal is talking about shoulder slouching, but the person's actually back is done, you're done. You've got a wrong signal, right? So the thing is, people are talking about Parkinson's disease. I don't know how in India how much it is, but in US certainly it's a big issue. So there is a company which is actually just giving out the cell phone and looking at how a person actually does things on a cell phone. From their accelerometer readings, they can actually try to predict if this person has what degree of Parkinson. If you think of it, there is nothing, no medical part in it. It's just using mobile technology and the data that's collected on the mobile device from its small chip, which has nothing to do with health, but relating that data to a Parkinson or some other thing, how important is it? Now meshing up with that data with the location of this person, at what time of the day, that gives them even more insight. If the person has more symptoms in the morning versus evening, right? So think of the complexity. The network keeps increasing, and it's still the same device. It's just your mobile phone, nothing special. So that's the role data scientists will play, right? I think that should be the last. So in summary, remember social, mobile, global, virtual, variable are important, and the KPIs are important, right? Future waves of tech talent is big data and data science, cyber security, but irrespective of what industry it is. Thanks so much. And if you have any questions, that's my email address. I don't have my business card. That's my email address. You can reach out to me, and if you have questions, I'll take them.